Politics. 232. The Political Myth. Position paper number 123, July 1990. In a review written in 1954, historian A.J.B. Taylor, not himself a Christian, said of socialism that it assumed the perfectibility of man by man and an indefinite expansion of productivity. However, once admit that human wickedness and natural hardship are inevitable, and socialism would have no sense. A.J.P. Taylor, Politicians, Socialism and Historians, page 16, New York, New York, Stein and Day, 1982, page 16. Given the Augustinian Calvinist, biblical doctrine of man, it follows that socialism cannot work. Man cannot remake man. The supernatural regenerating grace of God is required. The antithesis seen so clearly by Taylor was not new to him. Other scholars had also seen it. The romantic French historian Jules Michelet wrote to Victor Hugo on May 4, 1856, that the two salient opposing forces were Christianity and the Revolution. Roland Barthes, Michelet, New York, New York, Hill and Wang, 1987, page 76. Hugo himself had naturalistic answers, among them the love of nature for man's salvation. In his poem, Liberty, Equality, Fraternity, he wrote, "And yet I ask sometimes in wonder, as I wander the meadows among, can brother for brother feel hatred as he hears the lark's musical song?" The rise of the modern state has deep roots in pagan antiquity. Now, as then, the state seeks to provide not God's justice, but humanistic salvation. The state has grown in power because man's hunger for redemption without the triune God has necessitated that some agency minister to man's demand for salvation. Barthes, in a significant footnote, said of Michelet that any historical study of his thought should pay the closest attention to the Gnostic halo around his thought. Page 155, N. Gnosticism has been very much with us in modern dress in the past few centuries, in such men as William Blake in poetry, Emanuel Swedenborg in religion, and G.F. Hegel in philosophy. While ancient Gnosticism had an involved mythology, its basic premises were that 1. Gnosis, or knowledge, is the key to life. 2. Only the elite can grasp this knowledge. 3. The Bible, if used, had to be read as a vast symbolic document, meaning something undreamed of by the common man, and the Old Testament was to be discarded. These elements are basic to modern Gnosticism. The knowledge possessed by the philosopher kings is man's only hope. The facade and forms of democracy and religion are retained, but are given a new content and direction which is understood by the elite. A contemporary manifestation of this ideology is apparent in the myth of politics. According to the myth of politics, man's salvation requires a powerful and even totalitarian state. The state and its schools alone have the key to human redemption and regeneration. Those who oppose the myth of political salvation are thus seen as enemies of the people, as fascists, racists, or whatever else in the way of ugly terms that can be dredged up. The opponents of political salvation are viewed as the demonic forces against man's hope and future. Increasingly, Orthodox Christianity is seen in such terms as evil. A few years ago, in a church trial, the state's attorney waved a Bible at me and called it a child abuse manual. It did not seem to upset the few ministers present, and I was told that she came from a fine family, which included a past governor. For humanistic, quote, saints, end quote, it is Christianity, the Bible, and Christians who are the great evil. To all of this, most church members are indifferent. Christ is being crucified afresh, but they are more interested in television, sports, and their miscellaneous interests. About a century and a half ago, Coleridge wrote that religion is the centre of gravity in a realm. That centre of gravity is now humanistic statism, not Christianity. Ironically, both the Revolution and its followers on the one hand, and too many churchmen on the other, expect salvation as a miracle-ending history. As Taylor noted, the British left believed as confidently as Lenin had done in 1917 that socialism could be made in 24 hours. The only problem was to win a majority. Then socialism would follow of its own accord. Page 183. This was the left's dream of an automatic rapture into a socialist utopia on earth. The Church, too, has had many dreams of a rapture and an escape from history. Not too long ago, a US State Department official predicted the almost immediate end of history. A book should be written about the absurdities of humanistic rapture faith. A remarkable example of this can be found in the revered works of William Godwin, and also in writings of some contemporary feminists. A false doctrine of salvation is a deadly faith because it warps life and society and creates expectations which cannot be met. President John F. Kennedy spoke glowingly of the fact that men everywhere were being caught up in a rising tide of expectations. Now that disillusionment and bitterness has set in, politics, which was to have given man a paradise on earth, is giving him hell instead. Moreover, as the state began to damn the people as polluters, the facts were leaking out slowly that the greatest polluter by far is the state, in its mismanagement of sewage, water, garbage, forests, and more. At the same time, the state's taxation has become more and more oppressive, so that men now feel the need of being saved from their political leaders. But the answer is not another set of men. The state, which under God is to be a ministry of justice, has become, instead, man's sovereign and saviour. It has become a great and evil power because men have willed it so. It had seemed good to have a God state which man could control by his votes, but that God state is out of control now, and it is controlling men and steadily confiscating their freedom, families, land, wealth, and more. Men cannot expect politics and the state to change unless they first are changed. They cannot indict the state with any moral standing for claiming all powers in all spheres when men have limited God's claims on themselves and their possessions. It is not surprising that ours has been called a drug culture. It is silly to expect the state to be successful in combating drugs. The lure of drugs is a quick and unearned peace and happiness, a sense of fulfillment. This is a costly illusion, but a prevalent one. The lure of political salvation is similar. Elect certain men to rule over us, and there will be solutions to the problems of poverty, social conflict, ignorance, racism, and more. We can at least say that there is some improvement on the political scene from the extreme expectation of stated salvation affirmed by President Lyndon B. Johnson. Johnson, an immoral man, expected the state to produce a moral society. The political myth is remarkable for its absurdities, as well as its essential profanity. In a remarkable article, 1966, on H.G. Wells, Taylor called attention to the fact that Wells, in his novels, relied on naturalistic miracles to solve all problems. Taylor described it as the need for miracles. Page 136. Science was Wells's hope, but the word science was simply used as an incantation. Page 138. Knowledge was Wells's golden calf, as of many people today, and he believed that men could be saved by a vast, ordered encyclopedia of fact and thought for its Bible. Page 142. Given enough facts, the solution would naturally emerge. But Wells did not believe that man is a sinner. Therefore, salvation for him could not come from the triune God. It had to come out of man's efforts. Michelet was right. In essence, the two opposing forces are revolution and Christianity. Change by man's destruction of the past, or change by Christ's regenerating power. As long as humanism with its myth of politics prevails, its hope in revolutions will prevail. This means the destruction of the family, the church, freedom, old loyalties, and more. Salvation by destruction has been a ruling force in the 20th century, and the end is not yet. Be wise now, therefore, ye judges of the earth. Serve the Lord with fear, and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. Psalm 2, verses 10 to 12.